Bang! Neeves Knives. I'm Jared, and we have the Tempest Mach 1 here, designed by Knives Fast, and I want to thank him for including me in this because I love the look of this knife. I think this is a great looking knife. You know, it's a blade shape I really love, and just, you know, the whole design feature. I love cars, and he designed this around, you know, a Mustang and also an airplane, which you can totally see the similarities in lots of ways, you know, with the pivot looking like a rim, you know, the window looking like, you know, a car window, and the swedge looking like the hood of a car. It looks really good. I love the way it looks, so I appreciate him including me in this. Now, this is a prototype, so it is going to be produced by QSP, and the prototype's made by QSP too, but I do have some concerns and some comments about it, some negative things that we'll get into towards the end. But definitely go and follow his YouTube channel first of all, and follow him on Instagram and keep up with what he's doing. He has an amazing YouTube channel, and also he's designing knives, so that's awesome. So go and check him out. Really quick, it's an 8-inch knife, 3.5-inch blade. The cutting length is a little less than that. Now, just off of first, you know, impressions in the hand, it is very nice in the hand, very comfortable. You have this finger choil right here to get up really nice and tight to the blade. I do really like that. I like that I can get it in multiple grips, getting my middle finger around underneath there for like drilling a hole or something like that. You can hold it back here, but you do feel pretty far away from the blade, so I always hold it up here. Now, the blade shape is more of a spear point blade. You know, if you take the window out, you can see it is a spear point blade, which I love spear point blades. I do think the center of the pivot is a tiny bit lower than the piercing tip, but you know, it's really close, so I would still call it a spear point. It is a flat ground M390 blade, and the titanium frame lock is orange peeled. So, you know, it looks really good, and this is going to prevent scratches. It's going to be a knife that is going to be very scratch resistant and dent resistant and just things like that you might notice on other titanium frame lock knives. We do have a reversible deep carry clip and T8 hardware all the way around. Love to see that. Lots of things that I love to see about this. Now, cutting with it, it does cut fairly well. We're talking 20 thousandths behind the edge of the cutting edge, and then it gets up to about 25 thousandths near the tip. We'll get into that in just 1 second, but actually cutting with it and going through materials, it does work just fine. It does cut relatively well. You're going to get a little bit of resistance from the window, but you know, it is what it is. Not that big of a deal. And you do have a good amount of leverage, especially getting up nice and tight to the blade. It is a little bit slim in the hand, and it is slick. So that is going to be a factor that is going to come back up here in just a second. But you can keep pretty good control of it when slicing and, you know, doing regular cuts. You know, and the geometry is decent. It is a slightly robust, considering what I'm going to talk about here in a minute, but it still works. Now, for doing utility cuts, you know, the type of cuts you would use to open things up or maybe cut things out, you know, for whatever reason, for thin material that's not really dense or thick, it works perfectly fine. No issues whatsoever. But when you start getting into thicker material, the tip is a little bit robust for the slickness. So the slickness of the handle doesn't give you much traction. So at first I thought it was the geometry of the edge, and I did resharpen it, and we'll get into that here in just a second. But even after laying back the edge, you know, it wasn't the best for utility cuts. So coupled with the, you know, a little bit thicker geometry behind the tip and the thickness of the handle, if I would have had a little bit more traction, I could have totally, you know, handled it no problem. You know, if I just let the butt end of the knife hit my hand, I can force it in, but then I don't have control because I'm too far away from the blade. So in order for me to have good control, I want to come up here like this, but then there's nothing stopping me from sliding up the blade. So that posed an issue with me for dense materials. And, you know, it just is what it is. Now, the action on this knife is really good. The window offers a nice sharp lip, and it's located in a perfect area for my finger in my hand personally. I can just grab it and my finger naturally lands right there. So I do enjoy that. And you can go up a little higher. I tend to hit the bottom of the window towards the hood of the car. But, you know, you can go up higher too, and it works just fine. Now, if you're going to thumb it, you can thumb it, but you'd rather just slow roll it. It's a little low for the thumb, but like I said, you can do it. You can do it, absolutely. But a little more satisfying just slow rolling it right there. Now, unlocking it, the lock bar, there's no real cutout. They put a swedge on both sides, but it's almost painful in some cases. Like, I want to do it right here, but I can't. It's too tight, too pokey, so you got to go down here. Now, you can do it like that, but I find that it's kind of annoying. So what I wind up doing is using the back of my thumb, and I push it like that. But then I do pose a threat, especially after a nice fresh edge. So I tend to just let it kind of drop a little bit. Sometimes I let it hit myself like right there. And, you know, it's going slow enough to where it's not going to be too threatening, you know, for the edge to hit you. So it's not that big of a deal, and you can always just control it. So, the cutout is something that he already talked about that he's going to address right here, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that here in a second, but not an issue really, as long as it gets addressed. I do see it having a lot of potential to be fixed, so, you know, I think it could be easily addressed. But the actual drop of the blade, very smooth. It is on ceramic caged bearings, so very, very smooth. Now, that's me giving it a shake. If you don't shake it, it's not just going to drop shut. But, you know, just some little light shakes, and it shuts really good. Now, if you give it any influence at all, it'll just shut. So, very, very smooth on the drop. Very, very nice. The sound of it, it does have a nice, satisfying sound. Not like something that gives you a nice loud ting or anything like that, but I like the sound of the lockup popping in place. That sounds really, really good. I also tend to unlock it sometimes like this. I just, same way I would do like a Medford or something a lot of times. Now, lots of milling on the inside of the handle, which brings down a lot of the weight and makes it, you know, pretty light considering, you know, it's an 8-inch knife. Like I said, reversible deep carry clip that works very, very well. Perfect executed clip. The clip is fantastic in the pocket. That's just the way wire clips are. Wire clips work great. Now, the one bad thing about wire clips is they're usually not comfortable in the hand, but in this case, not a problem at all. No issues whatsoever. Even back here, I don't find it posing an issue really. But even up here, you know, or being up here, you know, it totally doesn't bother me at all. So now, some of the sharpening now, and the heat treat and how the steel felt. M390 can be finicky for some companies, especially production companies, to heat treat. I did put it on the stone because it did start needing a new edge after me testing and using it, you know, and it did come from Stasa. So I did want to lay back the angle a little bit, especially before I finished my testing to see how the cutting geometry felt after putting a lower angle. But then I also wanted to feel how the steel felt on the stone, considering I couldn't really get a ballpark idea of edge retention or anything, you know, and I didn't have it for very long. So you know, there was no control controlled cut test or anything like that, but what I can say is the steel felt okay. It is, you know, nothing outstanding about it, but nothing negative at all. Like, I have nothing at all negative to say about it. Like I said, I can't say for a controlled cut test. I didn't have it long enough, and I didn't do one. But, you know, considering the amount of cutting I did, it seemed okay. I did have to maintain it maybe a little bit more than I would like, but I can't say that because it was used before it even got here. So after sharpening it, I did use it a little bit, and there was no issues. So, you know, regardless, on the stone, it felt okay. It deburred, you know, okay. I actually have a little clip. I'm not sure if I'll be able to show it in here, but of the burr, I started scraping the burr after I had a decent sized burr to see how the burr felt, you know, when it was hanging there, if it would just like kind of peel off or if it would push back and forth. And it seemed like it would chip off pretty easily. So I have an idea that it's not soft, that at the very least. It doesn't feel soft. It feels like it's at least in a happy medium range where it should be decent M390. Outstanding? No, I didn't get that feeling, but I didn't feel anything negative either, which with M390 jumps out at you pretty quick when you're dealing with some soft M390. So I did not get that feeling. It did take a good edge, very sharp edge. I didn't take it to a high grit or anything like that. And I did make sure it also fit on a fixed angled system. You know, I wanted to make sure that for freehanders and for fixed angled systems, make sure it works very well. And it works out both ways. So regardless of the system you're using, you should have no issues sharpening it. Now, after sharpening it, I did notice, you know, a couple little things, and not even after, I guess during. One, you know, the more swedges you put on a knife, the more likely you are to have a little bit of geometry difference from one side to the other. And I do notice a little bit at the tip. At the tip, one side is a little bit thicker than the other side, but that I can actually see that in this swedge. One side of the swedge actually starts a little bit earlier than the other, and that's common stuff. That's not me complaining at all. I'm just talking about it. So not a big deal whatsoever. But you know, one side of the tip did come out a little bit thicker than the other after sharpening. Like I said, not a big deal. And then I did notice one little spot back here that was giving me a little trouble. I don't know if it was. It looked like it had a new edge put on it, but I don't know. I think it was something to do with the grind, just right there, just one little speck. And I did have to fight with it a little bit to kind of get it out. I don't think it'll come up anymore. I believe I did get it all out, but it was fighting me a little bit, and it's hard to explain, and I know it probably doesn't make sense, but it was just like a little spot in the edge that no matter how much I sharpened it, it just was trying to stay there. And I think, like I said, I think it was just one little spot in the grind, but it did wind up coming out, so no problems. Sharpening choil, you know, the plunge grind could be just fine on this. This is not really a bad sharpening choil. And I say that because they didn't taper the angle from the thickest point down to the edge really slowly. They just dropped it straight down. So it's really not that big of a deal. And that's really not that ugly for a plunge grind area. But what you will notice is the more you sharpen it, you're going to have this little pokey spot right there. The steel is going to be higher in this area than it will be on the edge, especially after a few sharpenings. You can see what just one or two edges has resulted in. Now you can easily just knock that down. So it's really not that big of a deal, but it is a thing. Now there's different ways you can fix that, you know, from the factory. On the production, they can just go literally, because it has a little tiny bit of taper. You could just drop it literally straight down. You could let the edge hang down just a little bit so that you have something to remove, or, you know, do it just like how it was and put a little notch in there. You could even, there's so many different ways to do it. There's so many different, I could go on and on. You know, you could stop the thickness right there and let the edge, you know, like I said, hang down a little bit farther. Let this choil kind of hang, Now, I guess that probably wouldn't be a good idea. So let me take that back. Just the same way it is, just drop the plunge grind straight down to the edge. And I think that'd be just the best bet. You know, just leave it basically how it is. And, you know, after sharpening and removing some steel, you just might have to knock off this little pokey part right there every once in a while. But you're already sharpening, so that's not that big of a deal. So really, all in all, the choil's not that big of a deal on this, and I've talked about that a lot. You know, it's not about a choil. It's about the plunge grind. It's always about the plunge grind. It's never about the choil. So in this case, since they didn't do a tapering plunge grind, it's not that big of a deal. Next thing, let's go over some negative things. So, one, it's slick. It's very, very slick, which does hold you back a little bit. It stops you from doing certain things that you might want to do with other knives. Now, I can still drill a hole just fine, and this is actually a very good blade shape for drilling holes. These spear point blades like this offer, especially with this grind, offers a nice robust grind, so you're not going to have to worry about the tip, you know, or at least you shouldn't. But I would love to see a hollow grind put on this. It would give it a little bit better cutting geometry and a little bit better precision tip for utility cuts and things like that, especially when we're talking about how slick it is. Now, if there was some sort of jimping, and you know, it's not that I'm a huge jimping fan, but the orange peel makes it slippery. So if it was a stone washed finish, then we probably wouldn't even be having this discussion. If it had milling in it, we definitely wouldn't be. So it's definitely a result in an orange peel finish that makes it very, very slippery. You know, in reverse grips, you know, cutting straps and things, you'll be just fine because all the leverage goes straight back towards your fingers right here. And actually, this thing would be great for cutting straps and things. But for pushing down into a cut, you know, you feel like you're going to slip up, and it's just a slippery knife. Next thing, you know, like I said before, the finger choil, I believe that it should just be right here, just a nice little cut this little hump out right there and let it go right from the side, because then when you do unlock it, I can't really do it, but if I can, it'll hit my nail instead of, you know, if I did it down here, I have a better result in it hitting the top of my thumb. Yes, you could always go like that and let it hit your thumb, but then look how far down it's dropping. So I would say do it from right here, and then you would have a lot better ability of letting it just hit your nail right there. Now you could taper it from back here and like kind of cut it slowly, you know, just like taper it from a little bit all the way to like, you know, like that. But I don't know how that would feel in the left hand, making a little point, like, because the point right here would wind up being right here. So it's hard to say without, you know, testing it out and seeing what would work. But I know the result would need to be taking this little point right here out and allowing you to get to this point right here. If you're going to go down here, you can do that. But like I said, you're now letting it drop so far down. You know, it lets it get a lot more speed when you drop it and a lot of other things. Obviously, you can do it. It's not that big of a deal, but you see how far down it does drop. And the detent isn't laid or anything, so I'd love the ability to hold it up higher, you know. But anyways, regardless, a cutout for the lock bar, you know, and he already said that he was going to address that. And, you know, next thing, which this is common sense, this is with any knife, you know, when you're cleaning it, you're gonna, you know, if you cut food or anything like that, you are going to have to clean the windows of your car, because you know crap can get in the corners. Just make sure you clean the corners of your car windows. It definitely makes them look better. You're gonna want to use a Q-tip on this guy. It'll just work a lot better, you know. But that's with any knife, especially with a cutout. Not a big deal at all. All in all, I think this knife is awesome. I love that he chose to do internal stop pins. I should have mentioned that. There is an internal stop pin right here, right up here. That's my favorite type of stop pin on a knife. I think the lots of heavy milling on the inside really brought the weight down. It is very comfortable in the hand. The clip works great. Love the blade shape. This thing has a massive amount of potential. massive amount of potential. I really like the design. I think it's a great knife, but I do find that those little details do hold it back for me personally. Being as slippery as it is, I'm a lock bar stickler. Like, it is one of my biggest pet peeves. Anybody who's followed my channel knows that I cannot stand carrying a knife that I can't unlock comfortably. It's just essential to me. Now, I've gotten by with this one and just made it work, but it is definitely something I'd love to see improved. And the cutting geometry would be nice if it was hollow, but it's not that big of a deal. But it would definitely improve it. But that's literally like the last thing I'm worried about. The geometry is just fine, to be honest. It's just with the geometry, with the slickness, you know, it just, you know, you got to use a little bit more effort when you have. And it's not that it's thick geometry. Let me be clear. It's not thick geometry. The thing cuts just fine. It's just, it's slippery. But like I said, all in all, I really like the knife, and I'm happy to see a cool design like this. I love seeing a cool design like this because it just, you don't see cool designs like this. I mean, it's basic. I don't want to say basic. It's a simple design with a cool design feature or design esque. I don't even know the terminology for it. It seems like a simple design, but you can tell how thought out it was, and I love that. And I just think it looks so awesome. It's definitely a knife that I think has the cool factor to it. But there you guys go. I love you guys. Thank you guys for watching. Peace.